Here we go. Welcome to our Conspectus Grammaticus for Capitulum Tertium Decimum. What we're starting with today are a couple of really quick, simple points that are important, but that are really easy to understand. The first of those points is the idea of dicitur plus the nominative and infinitive. So dicitur comes from the verb dicere, and dicere means?
To say.
To say. Dicitur is what form of the verb to say? It's not dicit, which is he says, but rather? To be said, exactly. Dicitur is passive. So dicitur is generally translated as it is said or as something is called. So, for example, if we say homines, people, homines, lunam novam esse dicunt. How would you translate that? Okay, so we would translate that as people say that the moon is new. So what changes when let's see if there's a good example of that here. If we say luna nova esse dicitur, what's different about that sentence? What do you notice? The thing that's missing from luna nova esse dicitur is who's doing the saying. And so what's happened there is it's become what we call impersonal, meaning no one in particular. It's just, hey, it is said to be the new moon, or it is called the new moon. By whom? By, everybody. A little quick note. Let me make that disappear, if I can. A little quick note on the word item. There we go. The word item. The word item simply means likewise. A little quick note there. Okay, let's go on to the next idea. The next idea is going to take us about 30 seconds. It's a very, very simple little word. The word is vel. Vel. Vel simply means or. Okay? And it implies a choice between two different mutually acceptable possibilities. In English, a great example is 6 of one or half dozen of the other. 6 and a half dozen are equal quantities. They're just two different ways of saying the same thing. So likewise here with vel, we have, for example, hora sexta, which means the 6th hour, right? And in Latin speak, meridies is the 6th hour. Hora sexta or meridies are exactly the same thing. Here's another example. Centum anni. How many years is that? 100 years. Vel saeculum.
Or
a century. You can say it either way. Whatever you choose. However you feel that day. Both are equally acceptable. In fact, I'll repeat myself. Here, now we're ready for our first big idea, which is the fifth declension. The fifth declension is the fifth of 5 declensions. What does that mean? There are no more. It's the last. Robert, you want to say that for posterity?
It's the last.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. So it is the last declension. There are only 5, and this is it. If you take a look at that one, you'll see that you pretty much already know it. Let's make that a little, oops, here we go. Let's make that a little bigger. I'm going to pause this for a second to give you a moment to observe the familiar features here. So what is the characteristic letter of the fifth declension? For the fourth declension, it was oo, right? For the fifth declension, it's a. Awesome. And then all the endings you are already familiar with from other declensions. So Michael, can you ask your question one more time?
For the genitive and dative singular, does the macaron go on the E and the I?
The answer is yes. The macaron goes on the A and the E. Right? So on the fifth declension, every single letter A has a macaron on it except for one.
egas.
Accusativus, right? And that's because before final M, vowels always shorten. Before final M, before final NT, they always shorten. But other than that, all the A's have a macaron over them. All right, you guys ready to practice a little bit?
Yeah.
All right, great practice. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next idea. Let's see what it is. Ablative of time. Ablativus temporis. This is a really, really, really big idea in this chapter, and this is something that's super common in Latin whenever you talk about time. You'll notice in the example, to express time when something happens, the ablative without a preposition is used. I'm just going to give you something, before we even look at more of these examples, I'm going to move this over here, okay? And I'm just going to give you a little, we'll do this in black. I'm going to give you a little key to understanding how to interpret the ablative of time when. Okay? It simply expresses these common ideas in English. In, on, at, during. So every time you see the ablative used in something related to time, you can translate it into English in this way, or you can connect it to your English understanding of in, on, at, or during. Let's see how that works. Let's see if I can, yeah, perfect. Okay, so let's look at this first example. I'm going to change the, I'm going to do a lightsaber there. Okay, here we go. All right, so here we have mense decembris. So you can see in the month of December. You could also translate that as during the month of December. Illo tempore. That's a really, really common phrase. At that time. Illo tempore. Hora prima. At the first hour. I'm going to pause for a second. We're going to discuss these example sentences down here. All right, let's go on with our next idea. Here. The next idea is very, very closely related. This is just another slide that gives you more input on the ablativus temporis. You actually have all of this already, but you can refer back to this in the video as well. So next slide. The next idea is the accusativus temporis. What happens when you see something related to time, but it's not in the ablative, it's in the accusativus? What does that mean? The accusativus, you may remember from chapter 12, Miles Romanus. Remember when we were talking about swords? And we said, quam longus est gladius Romanorum, the sword of the Romans, right? And you say gladius Romanorum, decem, what did we say? Duos pedes longus est. Duos pedes. We used, Jackson, what case was that? Duos pedes. Accusativus, right? And so remember, it was used to talk about how long the sword was. Well, that's called the accusative of extent through space. Okay. We also use the accusative to talk about extent through time. Right? So, for example, if you look at the example here, look down at the bottom. November triginta dies longus est. That's getting to exactly the same idea as gladius duos pedes longus est. It's talking about extent through time, not just extent through space. I'm going to pause for 1 second. Okay, our last big idea, here it is, comparison of adjectives. We're already pretty familiar with this. Like if you look at our first example here, Februarius brevis est. What is that? How would we translate that?
February is short.
Good. Februarius brevior est quam Januarius.
February is shorter than January.
Here's the new one. Februarius mensis anni brevissimus est.
February is the shortest month of the year.
Exactly. Short test. Short test.
Yeah, we already learned this though. Like we touched it.
We already touched on it, right?
Yeah,
so you guys are.
it.
This
We
is
dipped
going
our
to
feet
be
in.
really,
No,
really
more
easy.
like a toe.
What you dipped your toe in. So we've got the. I'm going to change the. I'm going to change this back to just an arrow. What? You want me to go back up?
Yes, please.
Okay. There you go.
You should like turn it into lasers.
So we've got these three ideas now. We've got the positive degree, we've got the comparative degree, and now, last but certainly not least, we've got the superlative degree. So we've got brevis, brevior, brevissimus. So all I'm going to do now, since you guys have pretty much already got this nailed down, is I'm just going to show you a handful of examples. So before we do that, I just want to point out the use of quam here. Quam longus est mensis November. What is that asking?
How long is the month of
How
December?
long, exactly. And then we've got two different uses of quam in our answers. We've got Januarius tam longus est quam December. It's as long as. But we also see it in comparisons, right, Jackson? Can you read this one? Februarius.
Februarius, brevior. Should I read this?
That's okay. Brevior est.
Brevior est quam ceteri undecim menses is mensis anni brevissimus est.
Awesome, okay. So we've got it as, and we've got it as brevior quam, as than. Okay, so two different uses of it, plus its use as a question, how long, quam longus est. So here's some examples. I'm going to pause here while you kind of digest. That concludes our Conspectus Grammaticus for Capitulum Tertium Decimum Annus et Menses. Gratias, valete.